In 1938, a young London stockbroker canceled a skiing holiday, traveled instead to a city on the edge of war, and quietly began to do something that would save hundreds of children. Then he went home, put the proof in a scrapbook, and told almost no one for 50 years. His name was Nicholas Winton. He was 29 years old. He had no official authority, no organization behind him, and no experience of rescue work of any kind. What this ordinary young man did, alone, in the last months before the Second World War, is one of the most quietly astonishing stories of the century. Nicholas Winton was born in London in 1909 to German Jewish parents who had settled in England and raised their family as Christians. He grew up comfortable and clever, became a stockbroker in the city of London, and by his late 20s was living the steady, unremarkable life of a young professional. He was, by every outward sign, exactly the sort of man history never remembers. He was not a soldier, not a politician, not a diplomat. He was good with numbers and quietly capable, and he had no reason to expect that the winter of 1938 would ask anything extraordinary of him. But across Europe, the ground was already shifting. In September of that year, the great powers had signed away part of Czechoslovakia to Adolf Hitler. The country was crippled and exposed, and everyone who could read a newspaper understood that a German invasion was only a matter of time. That December, Winton was about to leave for a skiing holiday in Switzerland when a friend, already in Prague, asked him to come and see the situation for himself instead. Winton changed his plans and went. What he found in the refugee camps around Prague would not leave him. The camps were full of families who had fled the Nazis, living through a bitter winter with almost nothing, and among them were thousands of children. Their parents understood with terrible clarity what was coming, and they were searching for any way to get their sons and daughters out of the country before the border closed. There were efforts underway to rescue children from Germany and Austria, but for the children of Czechoslovakia, there was almost nothing. So Winton, a private citizen on a borrowed holiday, decided he would build that route himself. He set up a desk and effectively founded a rescue operation of one. Word spread through Prague that an Englishman was taking down children's names. Soon, desperate parents were queuing outside his hotel. He listed every child he could, with their details and their photographs, and then he went back to London to do the truly impossible part. He had to find them all a way in. Britain would accept these refugee children, but only on strict conditions. Each child needed a family willing to take them in, and a guarantee of £50, a large sum then, to pay one day for their return home. Winton had to find, for every single child, a foster family and that money. So, he worked 2 lives at once. By day, he was a stockbroker. By night, and in every spare hour, he ran the rescue, writing letters, placing advertisements, publishing the children's photographs, and begging families across Britain to open their homes to a frightened child they had never met. The official paperwork moved far too slowly for a country running out of time. Permits were delayed. Bureaucracy crawled while the threat grew. By his own later account, when the documents would not come fast enough, Winton was prepared to bend the rules and improvise the papers, because every week of delay could cost a child their place on a train. And slowly, against every obstacle, it began to work. Homes were found, guarantees were raised, names became tickets, and tickets became seats on trains. In the spring of 1939, the first of the transports pulled out of Prague, carrying children west across a continent sliding toward war. Picture what each of those departures meant. On the platform in Prague, parents lifted small children onto a train, fixed a numbered tag around their necks, and told them to be brave. Most of those mothers and fathers knew, in their hearts, that they would never see their children again. And most of them were right. The children traveled for days, across Germany itself to the Dutch coast, then by boat to England, and finally to a London station where strangers waited to take them home. Train after train made that journey through the summer of 1939. Each one was a small miracle pulled off against the clock. In all, Nicholas Winton organized 8 trains and brought 669 children safely to Britain. 669 sons and daughters, lifted out of the path of the Holocaust by a young man most of them would never meet, and whose name, for half a century, they would not even know. Then came the 9th train. It was the largest of them all, with around 250 children aboard, and it was scheduled to leave Prague on the 1st of September, 1939. 250 families had been promised that their children would be saved. But the 1st of September, 1939, was the day Germany invaded Poland. The borders slammed shut across Europe. The train never left the station. And of the roughly 250 children who should have been on it, almost none were ever seen again. It was the great grief of Winton's life. He had saved 669, and to the end of his days, he thought most about the ones on that last train, the ones he could not reach in time. The war closed over Europe, and the rescue was over. And here the story does something almost no rescue story does. Nicholas Winton came home, packed away his scrapbook, the lists, the letters, the photographs of every child, and simply got on with his life. He served through the war, married, raised a family, and said nothing. Not to his neighbors, not even for years to his wife. For half a century, the 669 grew up, had children of their own, and lived ordinary lives across Britain and the world, with no idea who had saved them, or that they had all been saved by the same quiet man. Then, in 1988, Winton's wife Greta found the old scrapbook in their attic. Inside were the names, the faces, and the addresses of hundreds of rescued children. The full scale of what her husband had done half a century earlier was suddenly impossible to ignore. The scrapbook reached the BBC, and one evening, Nicholas Winton was invited to sit in the audience of a popular television program, not knowing why he was there. Beside him, the presenter began to tell his story to the nation and to read from his 50-year-old list. Then she asked a simple question. She asked whether anyone in the studio that night owed their life to Nicholas Winton. And all around him, quietly, one after another, the people in the audience rose to their feet. He was surrounded by the children he had saved, now grown, standing for him. An old man turned and saw them and wept. That single moment of television introduced the world to a hero who had spent 50 years saying nothing. The children he saved became known as Winton's children, and the lives that flowed from them, their sons and daughters and grandchildren, are counted today in the thousands. Honors came late, but they came. He was knighted by the Queen. Statues were raised on railway platforms of a man holding a small child, the image of a rescue carried out one train at a time. Yet he remained, by every account, modest about it, insisting he had simply seen something that needed doing, and done it. Nicholas Winton lived a very long life. He died in 2015, at the age of 106. It is estimated that some 6,000 people are alive today because of the few months of work he carried out, and then hid away, before the world fell into war. He had no army and no authority. He had a list, a telephone, a stack of letters, and a refusal to look away. And with those, a single ordinary man reached into the path of the greatest crime in history and pulled 669 children out of it. 4 years of war would kill millions of children he could never reach. He knew that, and it haunted him. But 669 lived, and their families live still, because in the winter of 1938, a young stockbroker changed his holiday plans and decided that he could not do nothing. That is the whole of it. That is everything.